All right, so I've been gone, it feels like I've been gone a month, and just to let you know, I've prepared a lot of stuff, so we'll be here probably till 3 or 4. No, okay, I know you're saying, I won't be. Okay, I understand that. But I was, this past week, I was in Gulf Shores. My wife and I were there, and I thought this is, kind of funny. It would be a good illustration for this. When I don't get in the water, in the ocean much, and I don't go out in the sun a lot when I go to the beach because it just doesn't work for me. And I have that kind of skin that I'm either pink or I'm sunburned. There's the only 2 colors that, for the most part, I have. So I got out there, and Joni kind of drugged me out there. And as I got out there, I walked out. She said, well, you don't want to carry your sunglasses out there. And I said, yes, because I want to be cool, when I'm out in the ocean and whatever. And as I got out there, I forgot, these are my old Maui Gems. I think I've had these 12 or 15 years. My wife sent them back, and they've repaired them, replaced them several times. I'm out there. These are polarized lenses. If you are a fisherman or a fisherwoman, a fisher person, you know what polarized lenses are, right? Because when you have glare on the water, it's the polarized lens that allows you to see through the water anyway. Well, I got out there, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm in the ocean. It's July the 4th. If you look this way down the beach in Gulf Shores, Alabama, there are 1,000 people out in the water this direction and 1,000 people in the water this direction and many more than that on the beach. And I'm standing out there and I'm like, wow, but look at all of these fish. Because I can see just thousands of little, fish about that long. They're, so thin, and just schools of thousands and thousands everywhere. And I'm like, wow. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? Because they can't see them. In fact, they don't want to see them. I even said, hey, you want to look? No, I don't want to look at those. And then as I'm watching, I notice, and there are bigger fish. There are fish about this long in schools go by. And then I noticed later there are fish about this long in schools going by. Well, now people start going in. They start leaving when I start saying things like that because I'm like them. I know exactly what they're thinking. They're thinking before long, a dorsal fin is going to break the water. And you're going to start hearing that music, right? Da, 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 And I thought about that. I have to admit, it was cool. I loved doing it, but I thought about that. I made sure that there were people further out than I was, because I was out pretty far and over here. I mean, there was a little kid. I said, move up a little, no, okay, I didn't do that. I didn't do that part, but yeah, I understand, there are these fish, and finally, I don't think a lot of them believed me that there were fish all around them. Until a few started then jumping out of the water, and they're like, whoa, what is that? And, so it kind of proved it. But the polarized part enabled me to see something that I didn't see otherwise, right? Paul is going to do the same thing in Romans. He's going to say, here's the way I used to see life. Here's the way I understood it. Here's the way I understood God. Paul was a Pharisee. He was a very type A person, strong, a driver, the hero of the attacks against all these new followers of Jesus, or as he would call them, they were the followers of the way. That's what it was called. And he saw life a certain way. Now, all of a sudden, he doesn't see it that way. He sees something that he never saw before, and it changed everything about his view. Let me tell you why that's such a struggle for us. It's natural that it would be a struggle for us, because we live in a world that's all about performance, don't we? Sure. And if we may not want to admit it sometimes, but it's exactly the reason that you educate your kids. It's why you train your kids. It's why you teach your kids. You help your kids to learn and to build in their life some sort of self-discipline in their life, because you know that life in this world is about performance, and they're going to have to learn how to excel and do better and perform. I still remember my daughter, my oldest one, when she went off to college, and she had this dilemma, because here's Christianity, and it's about God's grace and God's gift to us, and yet here I'm going to school and trying my hardest to study and work to excel, to lift myself up. How do you deal with that? And that's the problem in our world. Yes, the world is performance-driven, it's performance-oriented. It will not change. That's the way it works. But God is not. It's different with God. And that's what Paul has already been talking about to the Romans, because he's trying to explain to them. Paul has never been to Rome before, but he's sent this letter ahead of time because he wants to go there someday. And it's written, to the Jewish people there, but also to mostly to the Romans, the Greek speakers, whatever. I mean, he's trying to get them to understand how God works and how he does things. And so I put in your outline just sort of as a statement to build these questions about. Paul wanted to help the people in Rome to show them a different way to see, a different way to see how God is and how life is. Not that life is going to change and the way the world works is going to change, but there's something else that they need to see and they need to understand, because just like I said, most of us still struggle with, well, don't I have to perform for God? Aren't there things that I have to go and do in order for God to accept me? Isn't salvation something that you have to earn or work out in your life? And it's just very natural because of the way the world is and the way we live in this world. So here, the first point that I put in here was, okay, I understand, but see what, Paul? What is it that you want me to see? And in the very first chapter, just go back real quickly, this is what he said. This is the theme verse for the chapter, or 2 verses. He says, for I'm not ashamed of thee. Say this with me, the what? That's the word, in the modern translation, it's the word gospel. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, this good news or this good story, he says, about Christ. It is the power of God at work. It is at work. The power of God is at work, saving everyone who what? Now, I know that a lot of people think, okay, so you just believe that there's a God. No, that's not what he's talking about. It's a whole lot deeper than that. Everyone who believes, he says, the Jew first and also the Gentiles. So the Jews and those who were not Jews. And then he adds in verse 17, he says, this good news tells us how God makes us right in his sight. It is through faith that a righteous person has life. Finished by faith. It means it's started by faith, it is finished by faith, it's accomplished by faith, as the scriptures say. And so what Paul is talking about is there's something you need to understand about what God has done and what faith really is. That's the good news about who he is. It literally says it is the righteousness of God, or some translations would say it is the rightness of God. This one, which is correct to translate it this way, it is the way God makes people right with himself, because they're all contained in the same thought or the same idea, that this is how God makes us right with himself. And Paul says, this is incredible. This changed everything for me. Once I understood the good news, once I recognized what God had done, everything changed about how I saw being made right with God and living my life. It doesn't mean that Paul's saying the world has changed and the world is going to be different. It's just saying this changes how you live in the world and how do you understand God working in your life in the world. Then he goes on to address something that would be natural. What about the Jews? And John dealt with this last week. If you jump to chapter number 3, this is what he says, and this is the answer to that question. Well, what about the Jews? I mean, so how do they fit in? Because the Jews were difficult for the Gentiles, because the Jews had taken who God was and they'd sort of gotten it kind of mixed into how they lived their life, and they looked at themselves as, we are righteous and everyone else is not righteous. We're the guys that do it the right way, everybody else doesn't do it the right way. We sort of have a special privileged position, and the rest of you guys, you don't have that same privileged position. Jesus illustrates it by saying, the Pharisees would pray something like this: Lord, I thank you that I'm not a sinner like all those Gentiles are, or a woman. That's what sorry, not my words, but that's what they would say, you know. They sort of saw themselves as a different status. And what Jesus taught was, that's not true. In fact, the Old Testament does not teach that to be true. Yes, God speaks to the Jews, He reveals to the Jews, He tries to use them, but it wasn't in that, therefore you get a different deal than everybody gets. Listen what he does in chapter number 3. He says this in the first verse. He says, then what advantage is there to be a Jew? I mean, if that's what you're saying, Paul, that's the way it works, So why be a Jew? And is there any value to the ceremony of circumcision? That was the outward identity, a mark of their inward faith that they bore. It's Abraham at 100 years old, he was the first one to be circumcised. And listen to what he says. He says, yes, there is a great benefit, a great advantage to being a Jew. First of all, the Jews were entrusted, say this with me, with the whole revelation of God. Wow. The whole revelation of God. I'll come back to that since he finishes, verse 3. He says, true, some of them were unfaithful. Yeah. But just because they were unfaithful does not mean that God will be unfaithful. Of course not. Even if everyone else is a liar, God is what? Yeah, he does what he says. He holds to his promises. Now, in some of your translations, which is a good translation of this, it says that they were entrusted with the oracles of God. The reason that you have this strange word, you only have it a few times ever in the Bible, it sounds like something to do with, other religions and other things, but it meant this. The word is actually logia, which is the plural of the word logos. So it's a word that is used as the idea, these words of life that change everything. And they were entrusted with these words of life. Is that an advantage? Yes, but you know what? It comes with an incredible responsibility, doesn't it? You teach your kids that? You should. Your kid's talented. Your kids have, a giftedness. Or your kids raised, in a way that is privileged over someone else. They have more of an opportunity than someone else. You know what you should raise your kids to understand? Yeah, that's great. It's a great benefit, but it comes with a great what? Responsibility. Of course it does. That means, God has put you in this place, in this position for a reason, not just for your benefit. This means you should take this as something God has given me to be used for the benefit of other people also. That's the privilege of it. If you don't, you know what happens to those opportunities? They get wasted. They don't mean anything. And that's how God certainly looked at the Jewish people. It's similar to the story when Jesus is with his disciples, and near the end he's telling them, and this is a bigger group, about what's going to happen. And they don't like a lot of what they hear now because they had an idea of how this was going to work. Jesus is going to overthrow the Romans. He's going to kick them out. We get to take over the Roman Empire, and it's going to go our way now all of a sudden. And he says, well, it's not actually going to work that way. And a lot of the things he told them, they didn't like. And so it says, many of the disciples left. Wasn't talking about the 12, but it was many who followed him, didn't follow him anymore. They walked away and said, nope, it wasn't what I thought we were going to get into. This is not what I signed on for. I'm going to go follow something else. I'm going to find something else that will give me what I want or what I'm looking for. And so Jesus, as he's dealing with his own 12 and a smaller group, he looks at them and he says this, so do you want to leave also? That's a fair question because they're discouraged also. They probably had projected where this was going to go. And then you look at the group walking away and you're saying, man, we built a pretty good team and a pretty good following. Now we just got cut way down. Which way is this going? Maybe we signed on for the wrong thing. But they answered this way, and I love this answer. They say, well, where would we go? For you alone have it's the same idea, you alone have the oracles of life. You have the words of life. You see things, Jesus, and understand things and can explain things no one else understands and no one else can explain. So where would we go? In other words, yeah, we could go somewhere else, but would it really deliver? Because you know and you see, and we're learning to trust you in the things that you say, and that you say this is the most important thing. So then he gets to in the 4th chapter, which is what I'm supposed to be hitting today. And there's this other question. So what about Abraham? What about this guy who is the forefather? He was the first one of the Jewish people. And if you don't remember Abraham's story, Abraham actually was a man who grew up down in Ur of the Chaldees. So it's over, you got the Mediterranean Sea, and you've got, where Israel is and all. So this goes, you're going further, to the east over into more the land of Iraq and Iran. And there is where he grew up. And he grew up in a system where all of these gods were worshiped, Babylonian gods, Persian gods. And so here's what happened to Abraham. God comes and speaks to him. And he says, Abram, that was his name then, Abram, I want you to leave where you are, and I want you to go to a land that I will tell you how to get there. In other words, he didn't tell him where he's going. He's just saying, I want you to go, and I'll tell you how to get there. And Abram believed God. He trusted God. And so he packs up his family, and he leaves. He goes up north. It's kind of up above where, sort of where Turkey is now, in a land called Haran, or a place called Haran. And eventually then God says, I want you to go down south. He goes down toward the Canaan land, the promised land. And eventually as he goes down, there's a famine, so he goes down into Egypt, and then he comes back. All of this he did because he believed God and he trusted God. Was Abram or Abraham a perfect guy? Did everything right? No. But the Jews kind of made him out to be that way. He kind of never made a mistake, never did anything wrong. You need to go read his story in Genesis. You're like, whoa, I can point out a lot of things, that Abraham struggled with. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that would make you feel like, well, wait a minute. So if he struggled, then is it okay if I struggle? Yes, it's okay that you struggle. That's not actually the point. The point is, though, but do you believe that God will be true to his promises and that God will be faithful? Is that what you're going to build your life on? And Abram was still a guy who said, yes, that's what I'm going to build it on. Even when it doesn't look like it's going to work out, or when there might be another solution, I'm going to do this. In fact, Abram's name means exalted father. And that may sound like, okay, so what's the big deal? Well, it's kind of a strange name for a guy who at 75 years old, when God sends him down to go south into Canaan, gives him promises about being a mighty nation, and from his family, all the other families of the earth will be blessed, but he doesn't have any kids. 75, right? And so his wife, Sarah, is 65 years old. So it hasn't worked out. I thought about it. I thought, how tempting would it have been for Abram to listen to the other, self-help guys in their day or whatever, and say, listen, you're just worshiping the wrong God. You just worship, our Canaanite god of fertility, and you would have kids. Or you just do things, it would be very easy for Abram to say, yeah, that's the problem. I've trusted God. Now I'm 75, and I still don't even have any kids, and he's given me these promises, but, so what do those promises amount to if you don't have any kids? So this is what it says in chapter number 4. Abraham was, humanly speaking, the founder of the Jewish nation. What did he discover about being made right with God? He said, if his good deeds had made him acceptable to God, catch this. If his good deeds, his goodness had made him acceptable to God, he would have something to boast about. Say, listen, look at me, how good I am and how all the things. And God is privileged to have me, on his team. He said, but that's not God's way. For the scriptures tell us Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his what? Yes, his faith. That means his trust in God. That's the point. Now, does his trust in God cause Abraham to do certain things? Of course it does. If you believe God and God says, go this direction, then your trust in God would cause you to go this direction. It'd be easy to get it confused and say, okay, if you do this, then God will accept you. But it's actually the opposite of that. He did this because he trusted God, and even if he couldn't understand or figure it out, he went anyway. It's sort of like there's a verse that says, where Jesus says, he who has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. So people would say, yeah, so you got to keep the commandments or you don't love Jesus. Or you don't. Well, that's actually not what the verse means. The verse means, how do you know who loves me? He says, these are the people who love me. How do you know? Well, they're going to move in the direction I tell them to move. They're going to go where I tell them to go. Yes, that's not why I love them. I love them, and then they love me, and then they do the things that I ask them to do. It's the response. It's not something that they do and therefore they have earned or that makes them loved by God. It says in verse number 4, when people work, catch this, true, isn't it? When people work, their wages are not a gift, right? So do you go and, you work and you have a job and you get a paycheck and you say, oh, thank you for a wonderful paycheck. What a gift you've given me. No, when you don't get the paycheck, you say, hey, what's the deal? We had a contract, right? I work, you pay. So, you're supposed to, it's not a gift. This is something that you have earned. So if Abraham was getting this because of what he earned, it wouldn't be because of God's graciousness or God's compassion. It would be just something that he'd earned. He says in verse number 5, but people are counted as righteous not because of their work. In other words, they didn't earn it. He says, but because of their faith in God who forgives sinners. There's a guy named Francis Spufford, and I know it's one of your favorite authors. No, you never heard him before. So he wrote a book. He's a British historian, and he wrote a book called Unapologetic, and then there's this long part of the title that's something like Why Christianity is Still Incredibly Valuable and a great source of emotional strength in a person's life. So Francis Spufford is a British historian. He's not a theologian, just to let you know. He's British, very British. And the reason I'm dragging this out is because if you decide to get his book and to read it, I'm giving you the but don't be offended part, because he's very British. So his language is different than our language or my language would be. He uses words that I go, oh man. And I don't highlight that word in the book when you're reading, because that's just the way he is. But he has great insight. In fact, this is what he says at one point in the book. He says, everyone fails. Yes, everyone. He goes after it. He said, this is just who we are. We all fail. He has a great understanding, because he says, I'm a historian that just happens to be a Christian, of what the Bible means and who Jesus Christ is. And he says it in his everyday language, of the way it works. One of the things he talks about that I thought was wonderful, it's worth reading the book for, is he says the problem with sin, and I know I have people that will call me and say, the problem with sin is we don't talk about sin enough. We don't call it sin. So here's the problem with sin in our culture. I think he's right. He's a British looking at us. He says, in America, here's the problem with sin. The word doesn't mean anything anymore. You can preach it all you want. It just doesn't mean anything. He calls it fluffy. I like that. It's a fluffy word. We use it in everything. But food manufacturers use sin. Oh, you eat this so sinful. Like you really want to eat it, right? We talk about all kinds of things as being, companies use the word sin in their name. It's just become such a common word for us that it doesn't have any real offense to it or struggle with it, right? He says fluffy. When he says that, I think he's kind of talking like chocolate, milk chocolate that's been puffed up with air. Yeah, I like that. It's kind of fluffy. He says, here are the words that we struggle with and we should use. He says, guilt, shame. Those are the ones we struggle with. Someone says you're guilty. They come after you, man, you'll get mad. You'll fight back. Someone says, let me point out, you should be ashamed of this. Used in the culture all the time, isn't it? And you'll run away and hide, or you'll attack back, because those are offensive words. Sin doesn't have any offense to us anymore. And I think he's exactly right. He's just talking about the culture, and he's talking about how Christ came and he took our guilt and our shame away from. This is what Paul's talking about in Romans 8. He says, so there's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ. That's what he's talking about. And Spufford has a great way of doing it. In fact, in Paul, this is what Josh talked about in Romans chapter 7, Paul talks about, the King James Version is, Paul says, I do the things that I know I shouldn't do, and I don't do the things that I know I should do. And he says, King James, oh, wretched man that I am. You ever feel like that? So here's how I would say it. I would say, oh, messed up person that I am. That's what I would say it, because that's how it translates to me. That's not how Spufford would say it. In fact, I can't tell you how he would say it, because I'd be in trouble, for using the language that he uses. But that's his culture, and he speaks words that mean something to his culture. Very much how when Jesus came and how Paul talks, He's speaking words that impact and mean something to his culture, Abraham. What about Abraham? Look at who Abraham is. Look at how Abraham became righteous with God. It's not the way you think. You just need to get a grasp on who he is. In fact, here, the backside of your outline, if you want to look at this is Abraham's story from Genesis chapter 15. Here's what it says about Abraham. It says, verse number 1. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram, that was his name before it was changed, in a vision and said to him, do not be afraid. Kind of like what Mikey was talking about, right? For I will protect you and your reward will be great. Well, what does he mean, don't be afraid? You're gonna leave your family, leave your home, everything. You're gonna leave and go, and don't be afraid, because I'm gonna be with you as you go in these journeys. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings? I like this. What good are all your blessings? Very real, isn't it? When I don't even have a son. Since you've given me no children, Eleazar of Damascus, a servant of my household, will inherit my wealth. And he goes on to verse 3, he says, you've given me no descendants of my own, so one of my servants will be my heir. He's saying this, he said, so, God, what good are the promises you've given me? Now by this time, he's 85 years old. What good are the promises you've given me? How can I be a mighty nation? I don't even have a child. I walk around all the time and people say, what's your name? I say, Exalted Father. And they go, well, where are your kids? Maybe I just can't see them. Let me get my polarized lenses on. No, there's still no kids. Where are your kids? So he didn't have any. And Sarah's, by this time, she's 75 years old. They're past the days of bearing children. In fact, in verse 3, the language, actually, this is how it words. You'll really like this. Is different than the modern translation. It actually says, Abraham says to God, behold. Don't you like that? I have no kids. Kind of like, God, apparently you didn't catch on that you didn't see that you made some promises, but those promises, I don't know what they mean, because behold, I have no kids, How is this going to happen? You ever feel like that? God, I understand that you love me. I understand you promised. I know you say you'll be with me. But God, behold, this is where I'm at. This, how is this a blessing, from you? And then it says in the next verse, it actually uses the same word, and I'll show you where it uses. Then the Lord said to him, and that's great understanding of it, but it actually says, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him. That's in the language. So it's kind of like Abraham is going like, he's in a tennis match. He takes his best forehand as hard as he can hit it and says, behold. And God rallies it back and smokes him. And God says, behold, watch this. Because God can do anything he wants to. And if God has said it will happen, what God is saying, listen, there's nothing more sure to build your life on than what God said was going to happen. Because God can do anything he wants to do. He will do whatever he chooses to do. He says, and the word of the Lord came to him. Behold, the word of the Lord came to him. No, he says, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, look up into the sky and count the stars. And I love good translation here. Count the stars if you are able, if you can. And I write in my Bible, you would see I wrote immediately, and he couldn't. He's not even capable of counting the stars. But God said, okay, you think you're so smart? He said, that's how many descendants you will have. Have you ever gone out and just looked at the sky? I would do this with my kids. I built a swimming pool and had a hot tub, and I got to where I didn't really like the swimming pool that much, but in the winter, I would go out in the hot tub. And as my kids grew up, and especially as they moved on into the teenage years, it was the only opportunity I had to get alone with them and to talk. We'd, grab a towel or grab a robe. It's freezing outside. I did this especially in the winter time. Turn on the hot tub. I had to run out there, turn it on because it's so cold outside. And one time, we even ran out there. My son and I went out and jumped in. It had not warmed up yet. And it's really not a good idea to be in a hot tub that's freezing cold waiting for it to warm up. It's still better to go back inside. So we run out, we'll run out, go out there with it, jump in, and it worked perfectly because they don't want to get out. It's warm. You don't want to go back inside because you sit out there, and we would just look at the stars and look at the sky. And it's something about it that just kind of takes you out of yourself and who you are and how you see life, and you just go, wow. And we would talk about life, talk about God. But my son talk about girls. My daughter talk about boys. We talk about everything that is important and just kind of working it out and figuring it out. I have chihuahuas, I've told you, and the chihuahuas always would come out. They'd come outside too, because I'd take food all the time, usually an orange, something like that. We'd peel it, and my chihuahuas, they do not like the cold, but they'd go outside because there's food. And they just stand there by the hot tub just shivering like this, like, do you have food? So, and I'm like crazy chihuahuas, so let them suffer. They'll eventually go back in. And we would just talk about things. That's what he's doing with Abraham. Abraham, look. Just look at what I've created and what I've done. You count the stars? In fact, I don't know if you know this. If you look and you see a spot and there's no star, there's nothing there. You know what? It's only because you can't see far enough. There is. He says you can't even see them that are there. And that's what he's trying to tell Abraham. In fact, I know you think, well, wait a minute, there are not that many Jews in the world now. Oh, he's not talking about just Jews. He's talking about Gentiles who will believe. Greeks, Romans, these strange people called Americans, He's talking about people all over the world, in Africa, who will believe in who Jesus Christ is, all coming from Abraham's willingness to follow God and to believe God, to go after him. There's a movie, have you ever seen, anybody's ever seen the movie Passengers? Pretty new movie, and it's an unusual tale in the future where the earth gets too crowded, gets too politicized, it gets too angry, there are too many bad things happen, too much nuclear, too much whatever, and they decide that here's your opportunity to go inhabit another colony in the future, and it really should just be today, but we don't have the ability to do this, and so they built a spaceship that can travel at half the speed of light. Now that is crazy that you think it could travel that way. They're going to get on it in 120 years, so in 60 light years, they're going to leave the solar system, the galaxy, travel across most of the universe, end up in a whole other place, and inhabit another planet. But on the way, one of them somehow comes out of this hibernation state they're in, wakes somebody else up, and then there's this wonderful scene. You can tell I don't remember that much about the movie, but this part I remember. They go outside in their space suits, and they're just looking at the universe way outside of our galaxy, and they're just awed by the whole thing. And I thought the cinematography was incredible, wonderful scenes. You're just like, wow, just look at this. It makes you feel so small and insignificant. And when you understand that this is God's handiwork, it's okay to be small and insignificant because of who God himself is. Now, it's a movie, so, this scene just makes her fall in love with him and all, but that's the way movies go. So guys, it does still work. If you take your sweetheart to a real cinematic scene, they usually fall for you until they figure out what you're really like. Then it's over with. But this is a good way to do it. So that was the way this one was done. He said, just look at this, Abraham. Wow. And then jump back. Here's how he finishes out in Romans then. He says, despite everything else I put in here, Abraham decided he was going to believe God's promise. This is what it says in 18. Even when there was no reason for hope. Catch this. He meant in the earthly sense. I'm not going to have a kid. There's no reason for hope. Abraham kept hoping, believing that he would become the father of many nations. For God had said to him, that's how many descendants you will have. And Abraham's faith did not weaken, even though he was about 100 years old. He figured his body was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. Now, if you look at Abraham's story, I know you're going to say, now wait a minute, it sure sounds like his faith weakened. It did. because he struggled the same way we struggle. In the next chapter, in chapter 16 in Genesis, he gets with Sarah, and they say, look, Sarah says, we're not going to have kids. It's just not going to happen. It's been too long. By now, you're 86 years old. I'm 75. This is not going to happen. So I picked up this servant girl when we were in Egypt named Hagar. And so if you go into her, then, she can have the child. And Abraham said, that sounds good to me. And typical guy. And, so they have a child. His name is Ishmael. This child grows up, and there's tension always there. Always a fight between Ishmael and later the child of promise named Isaac. Ishmael's about 13 or 14 years older than Isaac, and there's always tension. And the truth is, if you look at history and understand today, there's still the same tension. The descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Isaac are still fighting against one another in the same land. It still goes on. There's this tension created because they decided we can fix it for God, right? God, I know how this can work. This can be a substitute for what your promises are. Now, is that a wavering? Yeah, of course it is. But Abraham still holds on to God through that. And if you look in the next chapters, they go through a bunch of things until Abraham's 99 years old. Someone comes to Abraham from God and says it's still going to happen. This is when Abraham is circumcised, goes to his name change, and he says, you're still going to have a child. And Abraham, it says, I love this, chapter 17, he says he goes and he falls down on his face before God, and he just laughs. I'm almost 100 years old. And, my wife is pretty old also now. So, that we're going to have a child, it defies all reason. It defies all, logic that it's going to happen. And then he says this to God. Again, is this wavering? He says, oh, if you would just take Ishmael to be the child. Again. And God says, mm-mm. And you go to chapter number 18, and those guys out there talking to Abraham about the child. In a year is when you're going to have the child. You're about to conceive. You're going to have the child. And they're out under some oaks. And Sarah's in the tent, and she's eavesdropping even then. She's up against, that's what it says. She's up against the flap going, listening to what they say. And she hears them say she's still going to have a child. And she laughs. She chuckles. So when the servant of God comes by, he says, why did you laugh? She said, oh, I didn't laugh. She said, oh. Oh, yes, you did. Because they know everything because of who they work for. They know her heart. They know her thoughts. And then this verse. In fact, if you had a Bible with you, you should underline this verse. It's just too good. This is verse 14 of chapter 18 of Genesis. This is what the servant of God, the one speaking from, says. Is anything too difficult for the Lord? Wow. Is there anything that is too hard? In fact, the word is actually what would normally be translated wonderful. Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? Because you think this would be incredible, wonderful if I had a child. Yeah, is there anything that is so wonderful that God couldn't do it? What a great question, isn't it? My life, your life? There are things that we just think, this is never going to happen. This is never going to resolve. No one can ever fix this. Hang on. Hang on. Sarah felt the same way. Of course she did. She's 90 years old. Is anything too wonderful for God that God can't fix it? So here's how it finishes. Abraham never wavered in believing God's promise. In fact, his faith grew stronger. And I will tell you, you hold on to those promises, and all those difficult times and those questioning times, God will use them to grow your faith even stronger as you go through those things if you just don't let go of those promises. And in it, it brought glory to God. He was fully convinced that God was able to do whatever he promises. And because of Abraham's faith, God counted him as righteous. And when God counted him as righteous, it wasn't just for Abraham's benefit. Listen to this. It was recorded for whose benefit? Our benefit. Yes, so that we would still say, it is still the same God. And he still gives promises. He makes them. We need to know them, hold on to them, because he is still faithful to them, assuring us that God will also count us as righteous if we believe in him, the one who raised Jesus, our Lord, from the dead. He was handed over to die because of our sins, and he was raised to life to make us right with God. This past week, I had a friend call me, with everything that goes on in the world and in this country and all. And he asked me this question. He says, so how are you doing? He says, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? How are you feeling? And it's kind of a strange answer, I think, for him that I said this. I said, I am incredibly over the top optimistic. He said, really? And I said, yes, because I look at it and say, once again, we have finally proven that we cannot fix our world. We have finally proven we can't fix our lives. And he said, and that's something to be optimistic about? Yes, because now maybe we'll realize where our hope comes from. The only one who can fix us. The one who none of this is too difficult for him, but it's way too difficult for us. We just keep making a mess of it. Of course we do. That's what we do, But it's not too difficult. It's not too difficult for God to fix. No, of course it's not. He's very capable in my life, in your life, making things work, of taking things to an end. Just like Abraham and Sarah, he let them go through their struggles, their difficulties, trying to fix it themselves, until ultimately you just kind of come to that point where you realize, oh my goodness, I need some hope. There's my hope. There's the one that I can look to for the answers. Let's pray together. And Heavenly Father, we thank you that in the midst of our struggles, our difficulties, and we all have them, in the midst of our sometimes foolishness trying to fix things in a way that we think are right without looking to you, without seeing things the way you see them. Lord, we end up just making a bigger mess sometimes. But we thank you that you are our hope. And that you've called us to believe you, trust you, believe the promises that you've given us, hold on to those, knowing that you really are, you always have been faithful to those promises. If you're here and you've never opened up your heart to Jesus Christ, you may feel like there's no way. You don't know what I have done. I don't know what you've done. You don't know what I have done. But there's nothing that we have done that can separate us from the love that God has for us in Jesus Christ. We're not that powerful. He's way more powerful than we are. And his love and his compassion has the power to overcome all of our sins, all of our guilt, all of our shame. You can say, Lord Jesus, thank you. You gave your life for me. I didn't deserve it, certainly didn't earn it. But I thank you for some reason that you did. I want to know you. I want to follow you. I need your forgiveness. The sense of wholeness that comes when you're here speaking into my life. Lord, lead me, guide me in your way. In Jesus' name that I pray.